Hey everyone, welcome along here. Week 8. So, maps, mapping, and really what that means in Power BI, and also how does Power BI actually build our maps so that we can start to make sense of which ones we should choose, potentially even which one we should use where, if that's what we're going to do. So let's cut an hour into some Power BI files and see if we can start to piece together exactly what's going on behind the scenes and make sense of it. Alright, so here we are, okay? What I've got here is, it's the US election results. I'm not even going to remember which one. I'm going to pretend I don't remember. Doesn't matter, okay? But what they've done for this was to demonstrate a visual that Microsoft are pushing, Sandance, and I've put it into the new updated one because I think it gives a really clear message. And this is what they were also demonstrating and showing to people with this, is that with Sandance, it was possible to effectively map using a scatter plot, okay? And you go, what? So this isn't a map, it's a scatter plot based on latitude and longitude. But I think for most of us, we can look at it and go, that's the outline of the US. So we've got this piece together already. And if that's a bit confusing, let's piece this over. So I've done a scatter chart, typical Power BI scatter chart. If we look at the visualization selection, you can see I've just chosen a scatter chart for this. That's all it is. Highlight it, we can see. And onto it, I've just placed latitude and longitude and then put who won. So we can see who won which state or which county at this point, right? And that's, again, for a basic scatter plot, just looking at latitude and longitude, we can see roughly where we're talking about, can't we? So if we zoom in down here, Florida, okay? You know, New York, somewhere up here, California's over here, this way, kind of thing, right? My US geography, probably at a scatter plot level, isn't what it should be, okay? But overall, we could look at it and say, I understand what's happening here. Why am I showing you this, and why on earth would we want to see US election results from years ago? The crux of this, and the real point for why we want to do it, is because this is what is happening with maps behind the scenes, okay? At some point, a scatter plot is needed to locate your object, as it were, right? And locating that object is part of the problem that you'll face and part of the battle. So what do I mean by that? If we keep looking here, what I mean is if we come in here and I move myself over this way, you can see we've got fields. So if I pick latitude, okay, one of the things that you should really do and get into the habit of doing with your data sets is actually determining what they are. So in this case, this is latitude. And what we don't want to do is any summarization. So I'm going to untick summarize, or tick don't summarize even. And then we'll do the same with longitude. Mark that as longitude, and that we shouldn't summarize it. And straight away you can see we've now got a little globe icon on here, on here. And what that means is that for this entity, we are assuming that it is geolocation data, okay? And if we pick a text value, we've got city, we've got county, state, province. So potentially if we come back over here, we've got county. So we could pick that this is actually going to be county information. We've got a state abbreviation. So if we pick state abbreviation and we say this is a state or province, how does that start to piece things together? So now let's see, we zoom back out of here and we pick, let's go to a new map, and we pick our state abbreviations. We can see it's geolocated them, okay? Not necessarily perfectly, and this is one of the things that you get with Power BI and as the maps especially start to progress. So what we've got here is a Bing map, and the Bing maps will first off look in Bing for text locations. So if you use the location fields, it will first look them up in Bing to say, well, what are you talking about? Where do you want me to put the dot, mate? Okay. And that's why there's potential to use a hierarchy there. So what you find is that if you do state abbreviation that you can then drill down into county, potentially that will help us to locate more because the state and the county need to tie together. And we can see straight away that has had a much bigger difference. We've still got some over in the UK somewhere, typical UK getting in the way, yeah? But it's starting to piece together actually what's going on. So we could start already to zoom in on the North America area and we can start to see, all right, this is where it's geolocated. But remember, okay, all we've really done is put a scatter plot together. So if I come back to here, where we've got our scatter plot, and I change our scatter plot to a map, okay, and let's be sure to pick the same one. Okay, we can see we've got latitude and longitude. We zoom in, latitude, longitude. Got per capita income in as the bubble size, but I'll tell you what, let's take that out. Let's take population out. Let's just look at that, okay? And we can straight away start to see, hang on, it's the same map. Not much has really changed. And why would it? If we think about it really, why would anything change? We can look at this and go, all right, I understand now what's going on. And again, where I was getting, as I say, I can now zoom in a bit and say, there's New York. I could go and check other areas. So we can start to piece together more context against what is our scatter chart from the map. And that's really what's going on with mapping. So should we have a look now at the New York data set and kind of see some more things that we can have a look at and that we should think about as we're doing our maps. So I've pieced this together, okay, just using the three main maps that we've got in Power BI now. All right, as I say, there is a fourth, Esri, and there are some other ones as well that you can bring in from AppSource. But Esri maps is, to me, my mind, my views of it, is Esri is very much like the gold standard of mapping. So if you're using it, you're obviously paying for it and you'd be very used to using it. It is what it is. If you're kind of coming to Power BI and think, I want to put some maps in, okay, you'll probably pick one of these three, okay? More than likely, you'll pick the first two, okay? So Bing Maps, which is the nice simple one, ta-da, using Bing. Or we've got shape maps, and lots of people have got shape maps. In fact, from the channel's perspective, the shape maps video we've done in the past is our highest hitter. So what we've got here is I've taken our borough information and pieced that together into a GeoJSON, and you can download GeoJSONs from the interweb. Okay, check where you're getting from. I got this from the New York City data repository. There are others around, but what you've got to do, or what you need to remember, is these fundamentally are not maps, okay? There is a shape file behind it, okay? And once you start to get into the context of, right, a shape file, it is a shape that is being designated as an object, and then your visual maps to the object. So if we come in behind here and we say, let's show this as a table, okay? Which you can do to all your Power BI visuals, you'll see all we've really got is borough and a percentage. So how does it know what borough is what? And there's a way we can find that out. So on your visual here, okay, if we click on the little formatting thing, which is behind me, we click on here, the little formatting thing, visual map settings, you've got view map type key, okay? And this is here. This tells you what's going on behind the scenes. So what this is looking for is this borough name. So it's trying to map what's the borough name in the data that's being handed to it. Okay. So we hand it a borough name, which is what we're saying, borough. So it's saying Staten Island. This is the shape that I mean for Staten Island. And that shape is held in the GeoJSON file that's used. Okay. Likewise, Bronx, Brooklyn, anything, it's all the same. Okay. The net result is these shapes are actually designed to look like a location, but realistically, there is no map to it. I couldn't zoom in and get more map detail out of it. Let's go back to the visual. Okay. But these are nice because I have 5 entities to map. So they are quick and they are performant. If you use them correctly, you can get GeoJSONs that have thousands of map points. Okay. They are going to be slower because you're building a pivot table of results to then say these need to do that, and the results then need to be rendered, to be presented up and served up, which is fundamentally what is happening within these 2 visuals here. So these 2 I've got pretty much exactly the same, latitude, longitude, based with the added piece of the number of tanks that they've got. Okay, so how many tanks in at each location effectively is what we're saying. Okay, so a building could have 1 tank, could have 10 tanks. So what we're saying is how many tanks are there in any particular area dictates bubble size. And you can see for each of these, if we click on them, we can see under the options we've got different map types. So these are the ones for Bing. So we've got aerial, dark, light, grayscale, road. If we were to pick our Azure map, which again, Microsoft, I think they're going to move more stuff into Azure Maps because Azure Maps is an Azure service, and with Power BI, there's a bit of a conflict, fundamentally, is really what I would say. We've got a bit more information about what we could do, so we could bring in a satellite map, for example, and start to zoom in and see. We might even be able to see a water tower if we zoomed in on a satellite map enough. Okay? Let me see, there's this building here, seems to have quite a lot of them. Probably up there somewhere. Okay, so we're starting to piece together that maps aren't maps, right? And that's the piece to think through. All the mapping tools, be they Mesri, be they this, even the shape files, you have got a layer and then you are overlaying your data against that layer. And depending on how many points you have will dictate actually the challenges that you will face. And you'll see we've got here a little bit of an exclamation point, or exclamation mark, sorry. And we have the same, with our Bing map. Okay. So those are saying effectively the visual has dropped some of the data points, okay? This is a Power BI thing. It's how Power BI copes with large sample sizes of particularly in terms of actually how to present them all. Rightly, wrongly, it's just what happens. Okay? And that's where these can help. So if you were to use, say, your shape map as the front page to say, well, actually, what's going on? As soon as I click on here, we can see that these exclamation marks, if we pick somewhere smaller, should disappear because there's less data points to map. So it's allowing us to get to the point that we can physically present everything in a single place. And data point size and sampling within Power BI is a huge topic. It's one that there's lots of blog posts about. I might put a couple down below. I have done some videos on it as well. But it's important to be aware that what we are doing is we are presenting data points above a plane. And in terms of a plane, that plane can be a shape file, as it is in the shape maps. So you can build your own shape. Well, it's not in shape file. These are GeoJSON files, which are similar to a shape file. There are shape files you can use if you get to one of the different maps. where you can bring in SVG graphics kind of thing to it, all the way through to our maps, where a map is built, we use latitude and longitude to place it, or we use a search either against Bing, or there's an Azure search site which looks at where it is as a location. Fundamentally, the tools are the same though. So what do you reckon then? Okay, maps within Power BI are at the base of it all. Okay, they are scatter plots. We word out my advice to think of them as. Because they're scatter plots, if we can make it easy to route the dot, so in the case of a shape file or a shape map, GeoJSON, we're using a name of that shape to use. So we saw in our example where we used a borough, okay, to say this is where that is. Okay, we can do that. You can see within the shape areas you've got maps of the US using state information, so you could put your state codes to it. You can look at those mapping locations to make sure your data matches it. So if you want to use a shapefile that you found online, you might find you have to build like a key table or something to map what you've got in your data to what the shapefile is expecting. I've done that in the past. It works very well. It's a pain in the neck, but again, it works very well. Then you get into the mainstream maps, the more traditional maps that people mean. But they haven't changed, have they? Because they're still a scatter plot telling me, well, what to plot against where to plot it. And that where needs to be found. So if there's not latitude and longitude, it's going to look that up. So from a consistency perspective, I would say make sure that you think about your geographic information and make sure that you think about how you're going to consistently put those to get that together. It might be a case, so where I've done in the past where we've looked at offices around the world for a client, that you choose to piece those together and manually get that list of latitude and longitude codes for those to see actually what's going on. So for a global retail store, even a national retail environment, you might actually just get the latitude and longitude of each store, put them together. Likewise though, if it was a case of my customers and I was saying, right, I want to do this, that's not going to work, because every new customer, I'm not going to say, can you give me the latitude and longitude of your house, please? That wouldn't work. Okay, but one of the things I could use would be a postcode lookup. So when they put their postcode in, it will look it up and say, this is the latitude and longitude of that postcode. I could choose to say, well, then we can use that postcode information to start that off and get then county information for somebody. So are they in Tyne and Wear, like where Newcastle is, right? And then use that to route things together and say, well, that's the level that I want my shapefile for, and the shapefile would show me number of customers per county. I could click on that and it would then show me drill down to that, and I could then drill down and see detailed information about where my customers are in that county if I really wanted to. It's about piecing your maps together and thinking about the right way to do them though. So for our New York water tower data set, it's more than likely, just because Manhattan has so many still, that using basic maps as our core starting point isn't going to work because of the sheer quantity involved. So for our ease of use, we may find that using shape files is better, and it may well be the current one we've got for boroughs is the right way. It may well be we use something else. So there's the NTA pieces in there. There are some other informational pieces that we've got within the data set that are going to really help us narrow down where is it that I'm actually meaning when I'm wanting to understand what's happening in which area, and to be able to target if there are hotspots, because that's got to be important to me as well, hasn't it? How many things have we had recently where E. coli have appeared? Oh, what can we do? And it might be there's something in here that we can start to piece together. E. coli is outbreaking here, but is it a single location? Is it wider? And that would be something that, from a CDC perspective, so if there was an outbreak, and we did the same with COVID, when the outbreaks appeared, you'd start to try and understand what's happening, the spread of it, how's it going through. All those are all related, but it's all about being able to use and understand that your reference layer is the map, and your actual visualizations that you want are your data points plotted on that reference layer without actually interacting with that reference layer, if that makes sense, because the map and the reference data don't align. They don't mix, as it were. You use the map as a bed, a background, as it were, for your scatter plot. Make sense? Hope so. We'll do some more on Saturday, yeah, and hopefully I'll be able to kind of help really nail that down. We'll look at a bit more of the settings of it, look at how you build a shapefile, for example. Have a good week. Take care. Stay safe. Ta-da.